Okay, so we're diving in deep today.
Really deep.
Yeah, into the first 72 hours of Trump's second presidency.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. We've got news articles and like social media posts, even these snippets of conversations. It's like,
It's a puzzle.
yeah.
Where the pieces are all still moving around.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think even with just 3 days worth of material, we've got some really clear patterns emerging.
Yeah, it seems like he really hit the ground running.
Totally.
And not even just picking up where he left off.
Right.
It's like
Doubling
down on a lot of priorities.
Totally. Okay, so our main source today is the Sky News article. Trump latest. Hundreds more troops heading to U.S.-Mexico border in immigration crackdown.
Bitches.
Yeah, really rolls right off the tongue.
Right.
So this covers those initial 72 hours, and let me tell you, it is packed.
Oh, yeah.
So immigration is like front and center right away, and there's this wave of executive orders.
The article highlights troop deployments to the border right away.
Right.
A suspension of migrant entry and even plans for these large-scale deportations they're talking about.
Wow.
It even mentions construction of like tent shelters in Mexico
Wow.
in anticipation of this surge of people trying to cross.
Oh, wow.
And the article even estimates like almost 5 million Mexicans are living in the U.S. without authorization.
That's a huge number, and I mean, is it even feasible to think that this is going to work?
Right. It makes you wonder how to even go about that.
Exactly.
Immigration law is so complex, and the logistics of like identifying everyone, detaining them, deporting that many people.
It's overwhelming.
Daunting, to say the least.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move to another big thing that happened those first few days. Trump's pardons.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically connected to the January 6th Capitol riot.
I mean, this was controversial, to say the least.
Definitely.
Even within his own party.
Yeah.
The article states that around 1,500 people were pardoned.
Wow.
Convicted for their roles in the riot, and even his own transition team was surprised
Oh, wow.
by this decision.
And it's not just the number. It's like
Right.
what it says.
The message.
The message it sends, yeah. And the article brings up Pamela Hemphill,
Okay.
who was a Trump supporter, and she refused the pardon.
Wow.
Yeah, she saw it as an attempt to, like, rewrite history. And she even called herself a former member of the MAGA cult
Oh, wow.
and called Trump a dangerous narcissist.
Strong words.
Strong words, yeah. And
Yeah.
then there's this part where the article mentions a Republican representative offering Capitol tours to pardoned rioters.
Oh, wow.
So now people are worried that we're normalizing the actions of these people who were involved in this violent attack, on our democracy.
Yeah, that's a big concern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got this hard line on immigration, this like dismissive attitude toward the Capitol riot. What about foreign policy? Any surprises there?
Well, he's taken a really aggressive stance toward Russia,
Interesting.
threatening tariffs and sanctions unless Putin ends the war in Ukraine.
Huh. That's so different from their relationship during his first term.
Right. It is surprising.
Okay, well, what did Russia say?
They basically said that they need a deal
Okay.
that addresses the root causes of the conflict.
Oh, so they weren't happy?
No, not really.
Okay, so international relations already getting messy.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And there's something about Iran in the article, too, right?
Yeah, some tension there, too.
What happened?
Trump made some comments about Iran, and Iranian leader Ali Khamenei called them delusional.
Oh, boy. Okay, so heightened tensions with Russia, war of words with Iran.
All in just the first few days.
It seems like a really different approach to foreign policy than what we saw before.
Yeah, a lot more aggressive.
A lot more aggressive, yeah. Okay, let's switch gears to domestic policy. It seems like things are getting shaken up there, too.
Oh, yeah.
The article mentioned the dismantling of diversity programs across all these federal government departments.
Yeah, this is big.
Yeah.
This could potentially roll back progress on minority representation and inclusion in government.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, and it could signal this bigger shift toward a more nationalistic and less inclusive agenda.
Interesting. Okay. Is there anything else that supports that?
Yeah, well, they also removed the Spanish language White House website.
Huh.
And there was a lot of criticism about that decision, a lot of people questioning how committed the administration really is to engaging with the Latino community.
Especially considering how large the Spanish-speaking population is.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're seeing some bold moves early on, potentially divisive. It's going to be a crazy 4 years.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Okay, before we get ahead of ourselves, there's this one incident from those first 3 days that is just wild, and it involves a bishop.
Okay.
And it really highlights this tension that's going on.
You're talking about Bishop Marion Edgar Budde,
Yes.
who used a televised church service to urge Trump to show some mercy toward marginalized groups.
Yeah, especially undocumented immigrants.
Right. And Trump's reaction was
Not great.
not very gracious.
Not at all. He publicly lashed out at her, calling her a radical left hardline Trump hater.
Wow.
And demanded an apology. Yeah, it was a pretty intense reaction to someone who was advocating for compassion and inclusivity.
Yeah, quite a contrast.
And the article includes this clip of Bishop Buddha defending her remarks, emphasizing the need for respect and dignity for everyone. It's like these two completely different worldviews just colliding.
And this reveals this potential fault line between Trump and those who advocate for social justice and inclusion.
Right.
And that could have a big impact on the direction of his presidency.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we've seen Trump tackle immigration, issue these controversial pardons, take this hard line on Russia and Iran, shake up domestic policies, and even have this public spat with a bishop.
All in the first 3 days.
It's insane.
It's a packed start to his term, for sure.
The main takeaway here is that he's not shying away from controversy at all. He's making it very clear what he wants to do and how he's going to do it. Okay, so stick with us. We're going to continue our deep dive into the first days of Trump's second presidency, and we're going to explore more about his global posturing domestic policy shifts and all the potential consequences of his early decisions.
It's going to be interesting.
It's going to be a wild ride. But remember, it's up to you to stay informed. Think critically about all of this and form your own opinions about where Trump's taking the country.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so don't forget, look beyond the headlines. Think about what patterns you see, what stories are being told, and maybe even more importantly, what stories are not being told. We'll be back soon with more on Trump's first days back in the Oval Office.
Welcome back to our deep dive.
Back into the thick of it.
Yeah, we're trying to unpack all of this information about the first 72 hours of Trump's second presidency.
A lot happened.
So much happened. It feels like everything he did is causing these huge waves.
Yeah, we've uncovered a lot, but there's still so much more to explore, like the long-term consequences of some of these actions.
Right.
For example, the controversy around the pardons for the January 6th riot. Right. I mean, we touched on it, but it's really important to emphasize how this could impact the rule of law.
It's like he's saying that some actions, even criminal ones, can be overlooked.
Or even celebrated.
Yeah, exactly. Which is scary. It makes people think they could just get away with anything.
Right. It raises concerns about accountability deterrence and, are we just emboldening extremist groups?
It's like if people think they can act without consequence.
It sets a dangerous precedent.
Totally. And then there's the whole idea of undermining faith in the justice system. Is everyone actually equal under the law?
It's uncharted territory.
It's unsettling.
Definitely a cause for concern.
Okay, well, let's switch gears back to foreign policy for a minute. The article also sheds some light on Trump's approach to China.
Yeah. This is a complicated one.
Yeah, huge economic and geopolitical implications.
Definitely.
So his first term had a lot of back and forth on trade deals and tariffs. What's the latest?
He's still taking a hard line.
Okay.
The article mentions the possibility of more tariffs on Chinese imports. But
it seems like it might be more strategic than anything else.
So he's talking tough, but maybe not ready to commit to a full-blown trade war.
Exactly. He could be trying to gain leverage in negotiations.
Or appealing to his base.
Right. Strong rhetoric has always been a bargaining chip for him.
It's a high-stakes game, for sure. Okay, let's go back to that whole thing with Bishop Buddha for a second.
Okay.
It might seem small compared to everything else.
Yeah.
But I think it really shows us something about his leadership style and his values.
Yeah. It exposes this tension between his approach and the principles of empathy, compassion, inclusivity.
And the article really contrasts his angry response with her calm and dignified, defense of her message.
It's like two totally different worldviews colliding.
Yeah. And I think that collision is going to keep happening throughout his presidency.
Right.
How is he going to engage with people who disagree with him, especially those advocating for marginalized groups?
Will he try to find common ground or just keep using divisive rhetoric?
Yeah, it's a fascinating and a little worrisome look into what we might see over the next 4 years.
Especially considering the broader context,
Right.
The political polarization, social unrest, global uncertainty.
The stakes are so high.
Decisions made now could have a huge impact down the line.
It's a lot. It's almost overwhelming. How do we even start to make sense of it all?
By staying informed, being critical thinkers, having honest conversations about the challenges we're facing.
Right.
It's important to consider different perspectives, look at the evidence, and avoid getting stuck in echo chambers.
You're making me feel like I need to go back to school, get a political science degree just to keep up.
You don't need a degree, you just need to be curious and willing to learn.
It's okay to feel a little lost.
Yeah, these are tough times with no easy answers.
That's true. And honestly, it's kind of reassuring to know that I'm not the only one who's struggling to process all of this.
You're definitely not alone.
This deep dive has really helped me to connect the dots.
Good. I'm glad you...
Okay, so we've talked about immigration pardons, his stance on Russia and China, the incident with Bishop Budi. What else should we cover?
Well, let's look at domestic policy. He's making big changes that could have a huge impact on our country.
Oh, okay, I'm listening.
So one striking thing is that he's focused on getting rid of diversity programs across all federal government departments.
Yeah, the article mentions concerns about that.
Yeah, it's a big shift, and people are reacting in very different ways. Some like it, some don't.
Right, and there's worry that it'll reverse progress on minority representation and inclusion.
Yeah, because these programs were created to address historical inequalities and promote equal opportunity.
Right.
So by dismantling them, critics say he's basically saying that these issues don't matter anymore.
Or that he's against diversity and inclusion.
Right, and it's not just symbolic. These programs actually had a real impact on hiring, contracting, access to education and resources.
Getting rid of them could really hurt minority communities.
Exactly.
And then there's the removal of the Spanish language White House website.
Right. It all fits into this pattern of moving away from inclusivity.
Yeah, it sends a message.
It does, and it makes people question how committed the administration is to engaging with the Latino community.
Especially since it's the fastest growing demographic in the U.S.
Right?
It feels like he's drawing a line saying, this is who we are, and if you don't fit in, tough.
It's a powerful message, and it resonates with people on both sides.
It feels like we're seeing a change in what it means to be American.
And that change is causing a lot of tension and uncertainty.
Yeah, it makes you wonder about the future of our democracy, our society, our coast in the world.
Big questions.
Big questions, yeah. But I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Me too.
Trying to make sense of it all.
That's what knowledge and dialogue are for. It helps us understand these complicated issues, challenge what we think we know, and hopefully find a way forward.
I'm ready for more. What else can you tell me about his domestic agenda and the potential consequences of these decisions?
Let's talk about healthcare.
Okay.
The article doesn't go into a ton of detail, but we know he's been critical of the Affordable Care Act.
Obamacare.
Yeah, he wants to repeal and replace it. But we still don't really know what his replacement plan looks like.
That's got to be scary for people who rely on the ACA for health insurance.
Definitely millions of Americans are in that position.
Especially those with pre-existing conditions.
Right. They could face higher costs or even be denied coverage.
So it's not just about having insurance, it's about the quality of care and whether people can afford it.
Exactly. He's talked about making changes to lower costs and increase competition.
Okay.
But we don't know how he'll do that or what the impact will be.
It's complicated and personal for a lot of people.
Healthcare is a fundamental right. It's essential for everyone.
Okay, so we've covered immigration, pardons, foreign policy, diversity programs, and healthcare. Anything else?
We should talk about environmental policy.
Okay.
This is a global issue, and his decisions here could impact the planet for generations to come.
He hasn't exactly been a champion for the environment.
Yeah. No. He's a climate change skeptic and rolled back a lot of environmental regulations during his first term.
So what's he doing now?
The article doesn't say specifically.
But it's probably safe to assume he hasn't changed his mind.
Right. We'll likely see more deregulation, more emphasis on fossil fuels, less concern for the environment.
That's pretty alarming for scientists and activists and world leaders who see climate change as a huge threat.
It is, but it's also a call to action. We need to hold our leaders accountable, demand action on climate change, and make our voices heard.
We can't just sit back and watch as our planet is destroyed for short-term economic gain.
Exactly. This is bigger than politics or national borders. It's about the future of humanity and protecting our planet for future generations.
Okay, we've covered a lot. Immigration, pardons, Russia and China, the Bishop Budi incident, diversity programs, healthcare and environmental policy. I'm a little overwhelmed.
I get it. It's a lot to take in.
But I feel more informed now, like I can actually have a real conversation about these things.
That's what we're aiming for.
So thank you for walking me through all of this.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, this is just the beginning. We'll keep following his presidency and sharing what we learn.
I can't wait to see what happens next, although I have a feeling it's going to be a wild ride.
Buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy 4 years.
Okay, before we wrap up, is there anything else from the Sky News article that we missed?
There's this anecdote about a woman named Kellner.
Okay.
She was interviewing people in Mexico whose plans to come to the U.S. were messed up by Trump taking office.
It's a good reminder that these decisions have real-world consequences for people.
Definitely behind all the headlines and the politics, there are real stories of hope and desperation and resilience.
We have to remember that.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost in the big picture and forget about the individuals who are affected.
So important to listen to different perspectives and have empathy.
Absolutely.
Okay, welcome back one last time to wrap up our deep dive. It's been a crazy few days we've been looking at.
Yeah, incredible how much can happen in 72 hours.
Seriously. So we've seen immigration crackdowns, controversial pardons, a really aggressive approach to foreign policy, some big changes to domestic policy.
And strong reactions from everyone, both supporters and opponents.
Yeah, it's clear that Trump is a polarizing figure.
Definitely.
And I think his second term is going to be just as divisive as his first.
The sources we've looked at definitely show that the Sky News article really highlights the deep divisions around his pardons for the January 6th rioters.
Right. Some people see it as mercy, others see it as dangerous, undermining the rule of law.
And then there's the clash with Bishop Bood over her call for compassion.
Right. That really shows the tension between Trump's leadership and the values of empathy and inclusivity.
It's a tension that's probably going to come up again and again.
Yeah, for sure. And what about that incident with the Republican representative giving Capitol tours to those pardoned rioters?
It really makes you think, are we normalizing the actions of people who attacked our democracy?
Yeah, it's a lot to process, and these early decisions could really shape the country for years to come.
Exactly. And we haven't even talked about what his foreign policy could mean for the rest of the world.
Right, like his stance on Russia and Iran, that could have huge consequences.
For sure. It's like he's trying to reset everything both here and abroad.
Yeah, like he's reasserting his vision for America.
That's a good way to put it. And it makes you wonder, what exactly is that vision?
Right, from what we've seen, it seems to be about strength, nationalism, traditional values.
But maybe at the cost of inclusivity and listening to different points of view?
Like getting rid of those diversity programs and taking down the Spanish language White House website.
Yeah, those are clear examples.
And those decisions are going to affect real people, especially marginalized communities.
Dev, it's a lot to think about, and I feel kind of overwhelmed by it all.
It is overwhelming, but remember, knowledge is power.
Right. The more we understand what's happening, the better we can deal with the challenges and take advantage of opportunities.
That's a good point. So where do we go from here? What can we do with this information?
Well, we can stay informed, we can stay engaged, pay attention to the news talk to each other, hold our leaders accountable.
Okay.
And most importantly, we can try to understand these complicated issues and listen to each other.
That's great advice, and I think it's a good place to end our deep dive. Thank you so much for helping me understand all of this.
It's been my pleasure. And this is just the beginning. The story of Trump's second term is still unfolding.
So keep listening, keep learning, and think about what you're seeing, what patterns are emerging, what stories are being told, and what stories aren't being told, because those are the questions we need to keep asking as we move forward. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Trump's first days back in the Oval Office.